Welcome to our session.
Thanks, Anita. Okay, I'll go first. My name is Jesse Hernandez. I'm with CPS Energy. I have the privilege of leading our community engagement and equity organization at CPS Energy, and it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And I'm your moderator this afternoon. My name is Anita Ledbetter, and I have the privilege of being the executive director of Build San Antonio Green, the nonpartisan CPS Energy, City of San Antonio, Bexar County partnership that administers the green building program in San Antonio.
Wonderful, and good afternoon, everyone. And 10 years later, I could say that I was here at the first one, so it's great to be here, and I forgot how hot it is in Texas. So I am Peter Muhoro, Chief Strategy, Technology, and Innovation Officer at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. We're a large distribution co-op in the Commonwealth of Virginia, power about 180,000 members through a 4,000 square mile territory with 18,000 miles of line. So we talk about being a community partner. We've got 22 counties that we, parts of 22 counties that we serve in many different towns and cities that are in our territory. So looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I guess let's just jump right on in. I kind of wanted to frame our conversation in kind of three pieces, right? One, I'm going to jump off with the kind of the assumption, based on my own personal experience, that the role of the utility in the community is very different today than it once was. Second, we can kind of talk about why and how it's changed, and really the third piece is looking towards the future. What is the future role? I'm from San Antonio. Do we have anybody here from Texas? Yeah, anybody from San Antonio? Yay, hi. To everyone else, welcome to Texas. I would say that...
I can't say bad things about Texas anymore. There's a lot of Texans in the room.
Hey, you gotta be careful. No, I was gonna say, I've had the honor of having my job for a long time, 19 years at Build San Antonio Green, but more importantly, I'm a native San Antonian, and I've been there my entire life. And so I wanna talk about, just kind of jumping off, how I've kind of seen how the utilities role as a leader in the community has changed. I think in the beginning, when I was young, it was kind of a one-way relationship, right? It's like we provide the power, and you're the customer, and that was pretty much the nature of that relationship since kind of utilities were created, right? What we've seen change, since then, the society, the way that people live has changed, the way that we use energy has changed. And energy has left the building, you know what I'm saying? At whatever point, our energy usage started shifting to, watches and phones and EV, all the things that are just outside of our building that we're living in. I think that was the beginning of a shift that we had. The way that we use energy shapes really our relationship with the utility, and the nature of the community shapes kind of how the utility is serving them too, I think. So in San Antonio, I think it's a really interesting how, and I know many people talk about this, the last several years really helped to kind of accelerate a new phase for our utility out here in San Antonio. And so I'm just gonna kind of open it up to our panelists, and can you talk a little bit about what the role of the utility used to be as a leader in the community, and maybe have you seen how that's changed today?
Sure, I'll kick off, and I'll actually take a little bit more of historical perspective. I used to hate history, and now going to school, I should be precise about that, but I actually do enjoy history. But if you look back, 80 plus years ago during the Roosevelt administration and the creation of the Rural Electrification Act, which is actually what drove into helping rural America get electrified throughout the U.S. Today, electric co-ops power about 56% of the land mass in the United States, 47 million miles of distribution lines, I believe, and that was all from an act that brought people together, and the utility really was the enabler of bringing electricity to people who were not electrified. That's where, if you look from that context, and then it moved on into when appliances came in, and in fact, the electric co-ops and many utilities were in the business of selling air conditioning, selling, all these different things, right? Enabling the community to have access to this, and then kind of walked away from that, where even though we as electric co-ops are owned by our consumers, it's almost like a mindset of we're just your power provider, and this is what we do. Well, fast forward years later, we recognize that maybe that's not the case. Our mission, and in fact, the Trade Association of Electric Co-ops, NRECA, really worked together with co-ops to put together a whole mission statement, a whole idea of we power communities, we power members to empower communities to change the quality of life, right? And that's what really the mission began, in taking us back to what it meant quality of life back in the early 30s and the like. And so that's kind of the transformation that has happened, where if you focus as a utility in the community from a quality of life perspective, you recognize, first of all, you have to be flexible in all your planning as you go through every day. And so, we've seen transformation from, you were just a power provider to many of us now becoming even internet service providers, or building middle mile fiber. Solving community problems is what we as utilities are good at doing. We know how to solve big problems, we know how to take a problem, and so the transformation has really gone from we were there to serve the communities, to change the quality of life, improve the quality of life, to now coming back to that same place of saying our goal is not just the delivery of electrons, and we are good at that, and we're going to keep doing that, and in fact, we cannot fail at that. That's the core of who we are, but that core of who we are is essentially to change the quality of life. So it's if you ever follow Simon Sinek, it's a whole idea of start with why, right? And why do you exist? And for us is we take the look as an electric co-op today, and where we've transformed ourselves is to say, as a community leader, we're here to ensure that we can change and improve the quality of life.
Great. So I'll go back 15 years, not quite 80 like Peter did, but
I'm not that old.
going back 15 years, I think, back then that's when I was first starting. I came from selling groceries to selling electricity, right? And back at that time, there was the conversation about competition, right? And that started to trigger, how do you stay relevant in the utility perspective? And we're a municipal utility, the largest in the country, and we're owned by the city of San Antonio. And so there was a conversation around how do we stay relevant, how do we keep competition out, if that ended up being the case. And Anita's very familiar. We have a program at the time that was approved by our board and our city council called the STEP program, the Save for Tomorrow Energy Plan. And I think that was the beginning, right, of becoming part of the community and how we engage, because this program allowed us to be able to provide not only a great benefit to the community in terms of energy efficiency programs. That's what got us to where we're at in solar today, being able to provide programs for our low-income customers in regards to weatherization, and also being able to provide rebates for our customers for energy efficiency, lighting. I mean, we're purchasing millions of LED light bulbs, back at the time when they were $5 or $6 a piece, and we're giving them away for free or for $1. I think we had HEB, right, and we're selling them for $1. And so that's what started that conversation. But in regards to how have we evolved, we're part of the community, we're owned by the community, and they're basically our boss, right? And so we need to be able to adapt and be able to evolve, and how we're able to do that is by not necessarily focusing on your electricity. Yes, we have the poles and wires, we have the distribution and the generation at CPS Energy, but that's something that's expected of us, right? Because that's what we're there to do. And so the community expects us to be able to provide that, but then we're also a part of the community. So how do we go beyond that? And the way we're able to do that is, the STEP program got started back in 2009. And so that was very successful and continues. A secondary iteration of that continues today, even 13 years later. But beyond that, back in 2014, we were able to get support again from our board and our city council to build a team that was dedicated to being out in the community. And that team we call our Customer Response Unit, or CREW team. And that's a team that's embedded out in the community. And think of them as case managers, but they're not necessarily case managers. They do case management to an extent where they go and they're mobile. They're out in the community. They go to customers' homes, and we wanted to make sure that we're able to reach every single customer at CPS Energy, regardless whether there was an issue with the digital divide or transportation issue or health issue. So, it's a team that I'm very proud of because I've led it since it got started. And we're able to go to a customer's home, go to the hospital if they're at the hospital. I don't know if many of you are aware, but if a customer is at the hospital and let's say they live alone in their home and they don't have power in their home, the hospital cannot legally release them to their home because they have no power. And so our team would go out, connect them, get them connected, help them find the resources to pay their utility bill. But that's the very last thing that we do is in terms of having to address the gap that they have in their utility bill. So we look at, when we're at the house, are there food issues, right? Or are there transportation issues? Is there a digital or technical issue that they have, a health issue or medication issue? And so we make all those connections. Laura Jacobs is here from my team, but she's been able to establish, dozens of relationships with nonprofits around San Antonio where we're able to reach to these nonprofits and connect customers to any assistance that might be necessary, whether it's medication, it might be wheelchair ramps, transportation, food with the food bank. Or even my team, they're fully empowered. If they go to a house somewhere and they see that the family or the individual needs food, they're fully empowered to go to H-E-B and buy $50 or $100 in groceries and bring them back. And just to make sure that they're taken care of. Why? Because we care about our community, because we are a part of the community. And I think that's where that transition started to happen.
I'm going to answer my own question as well. That was a perfect segue into, I think that, it's kind of at the heart of it, right, is that there was a shift from customer to partner, right? We see that happening now. But I really think that, utility leadership in the community, it doesn't begin with energy, it begins with people. And I think that, to your point, that's a big shift that has really happened, is focusing on people, on the quality of life of people. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, as I said. We are a population of 2.5 million. We are expected to double in population by 2040. Texas, you've seen us in the news. We get a lot of hits from extreme weather. And San Antonio also, we have the largest. We're the largest city in the United States with the largest impoverished part of our community. So I think it's like 18 to 19% of our community lives in extreme poverty. And and that's a lot. Now, we have a lot of new people moving to San Antonio and they have higher paying jobs and there's a whole transition that's happening out here. And I think one of our focuses from the outside, I always say I think I'm a cousin to the utility. One of the focuses have really been, how are we going to move forward without leaving anybody behind? So I would say, and this is kind of a next question to open it up, is that the role of utility as a leader in the community begins with equity. It begins with inclusion. Oftentimes, like in the case of San Antonio, it has begun with us looking at historically marginalized communities. We talk about equity, and I think there's one consensus. No one really agrees on the definition. But I'll tell you this, I know what inequity is because we can touch it, we can feel it. And that's, again, just talking from San Antonio, I think they're across the nation, really. I had a pleasure of talking with your CEO in D.C. a month or so ago, and the consensus is the same. It all begins with people because I think the shift has happened where we realize that utilities and communities are enabling our existence, right? This is about survival, and we have to move forward together and not leave anyone behind.
I'll touch on that a little bit, and I think you're right on it, is we could define inequity all day because we know that's tangible, we could touch it. Equity has always been a challenging thing, and I'll take a step back, and there's a phrase I've used for years, the most expensive unit of energy is the one you do not have. We still have over 1 billion today worldwide, globally, who do not have access to electricity. The second most expensive is the one that's not used wisely. And we see that a lot, especially when you begin to talk about inequity. You look at the most disadvantaged tend to also be some of the ones with the highest energy burden, right? And so how do you begin to address that when you look from meeting their needs? It's the same person who you're having to disconnect for non-pay. We actually began doing that where we began to look at Every time you're a repeat offender in terms of disconnect, we're looking at energy usage and we're saying, okay, is this just because this is just a habit, or is it because you actually have a high energy burden? And what we found is most of the folks have a high energy burden. And so one of the programs we've created under our energy solutions, clean energy programs is called Vividly Brighter. And under one of those, our Vividly Brighter upgrades is an affordable energy efficiency program where we will conduct an energy audit, we will assess, we'll make sure that, we look at every capacity of the home and what is needed. We'll give recommendations. We'll work with the consumer where we will finance it for them at a very, very, very minimal cost. And by minimal cost, I'm talking we have access to funds from the rural utility services under USDA where we could actually draw down at 0% for these programs specifically. And so what we mark up is an actual state corporation commission approved administrative fee to cover just the cost of running the program. We're regulated by a commission, so we still have to go through that process. But part of the program and what we intentionally did is to say it's a lot easier to, and this is the problem with utilities, I've been in this long enough, I could say, the terminology, dumb old utility guys, Doug's, right? We've always done it this way, right? Create a program, blanket it, advertise it, and then just hope that they come. That doesn't work, especially not for those who are disadvantaged. And so what we began to do is actually focus on getting out to the communities and talking to people. We intentionally hired contractors who are in those communities because they're the ones who can connect with them. They're the ones who are going to have to fix this here and there, knowing that they might not even get paid. Or it might take a longer time to get paid and the like. And we connected with them and we said, who are those consumers that, okay, we're looking at, we know that these are the houses that need some help. We'll call the consumer, we'll meet with them in person, we'll walk them through everything. And most of them will say, I didn't realize the co-op had this program. I could have signed up a long time ago. And what we've seen is somewhere in the 25 to 30% energy reduction, where in fact, what they're reducing is paying itself off, so their electric bill is actually coming out lower than it was, even with the payment back of the energy efficiency measures, right? But we had to get intentional on that program, on getting to the community itself, working with them. And for us, it's an advantage. It's because someone will say, why are you focusing on that? We say, well, the less power I have to buy, the less I have to deliver to that consumer, it's a win-win for them as well as the utility. And for us as a co-op, everyone benefits because we're owned by our consumers. And so when we think of inequity and we think about how you approach it, you have to be very intentional. You have to get out to the community. You have to put your programs together. We're doing the same thing with electric vehicles. It sounds a little bit crazy, but the most disadvantaged are probably driving the most expensive vehicle when you look at from a maintenance standpoint, fuel standpoint, and the like. And part of their issues is, can they even be able to charge their car? And so we're working with them partly on an education standpoint, but getting out to the community, using data to tell us, here is what we know about these communities. Let's get out there. Let's get in front of them. Yesterday morning, I was in one of our very rural communities, and we were talking with business owners because if we talk with them, they will engage with their customers who come in. And literally, we had one business owner who told me, he said, I'm taking this packet of information and I'm just going to start giving it to people who come to my store to share what we're doing as a utility. That's how you address inequity and how you play the role in the community.
So from an energy equity perspective, I've been working on it at CPS Energy over the past probably a year and a half now. And if any of y'all would have Googled energy equity 2.5 years ago, that Google search would have yielded, a few pages around energy equity. And you do that today on your phone, and there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of pages that come up in that short amount of time. And that just speaks to the volume. It seems to be the hot topic, right? But I say it's the hot topic for certain people or certain utilities or industries, but it's really something we've been doing at CPS Energy for a long time. I mentioned our weatherization program. That's an equity program. It's the income based, and we have others, right? We just have never branded them that way, right? And that's something that we're taking a look at how we do that, but also taking an opportunity to see what else we might be able to build in terms of energy equity. One thing that we changed, we're currently in the process of revamping our weatherization program, and so we added an energy burden calculator to that application. And so now customers that might be outside that income requirement, right, and it might exceed the income for them to qualify, guess what? Now they might qualify from an energy burn perspective. If they're in that extreme energy burn that's greater than 9.9%, they automatically qualify for the program. And it's a great program because they can get up to $5,000 or an average of $5,000 in energy efficiency measures in their home. That's going to give them an instant monthly reduction on their CPS energy bill. And so that's more income that they're going to be able to use for other things as well. And then also, not to mention the power that we don't have to generate, right? It's the best type of power, and it's good for everybody. It's good for the utility, good for our customers, and great for the environment as well. And so we're able to tie those. I think as well from an energy perspective, we're trying to see how it's going to continue to evolve and what other programs we can build to be able to adapt them, right, to ensure that we're getting to the customers at the right place at the right time, and also at a grassroots level. You know, Peter, you mentioned being out in the neighborhoods, and so we do that as well. Focus on the data, right, use down to the zip code, to use census tract data, energy burden data, and then we do the door-to-door, right? We go do the door knocking, we do block walking to invite them to our events. We do neighborhood events in the actual neighborhoods. We call, we door hangers, we go and knock on the doors, anything we can for those customers that might be part of our digital divide, not have access to the resources, right? We want to make sure that we're able to have information that's accessible to them. And we're also trying to be very specific in the information that we provide to them, that it's ready for them to be able to read it, access it, and apply. And then also looking at all types of customers, right? So we're working currently, one of my team members is working with the Lighthouse for the Blind, for not only for those customers that might be legally blind to be able to get information on all our programs, but also for our senior customers. You know, I'm getting there. My glasses I need new glasses as well, right? But we're going to start printing a really large print format brochure of all our programs as well for our senior customers that might need that larger font, right, to be able to see all our programs and where to apply and how to get that information. So we're really trying to do as much of that as possible to be as inclusive as we can for all our customers, for them to be able to get benefit from the program. But going back to energy equity, I think it's something that's evolving, and I'm very excited to be able to be paving the road, if you will, on where we're going to be going from an energy equity perspective, because I think we're just touching the top of the surface, right? And there's so much more that we're going to be able to do over the next few years that I think it's going to open a lot of different doors for different people to be able to bring in new programs.
We've had a lot of wonderful sessions here so far at ETS. I've learned so many wonderful things, and one of them earlier today I heard that I thought was really amazing was just talking about how the younger generations, right, and everything that's really happened over the last couple of years is really kind of society has changed, right, and people's expectations have changed and relationships have changed, and I think it's an exciting time. You know, can we talk a little bit about the role of, and I know there was some growing pains in the beginning, but the role of transparency, you know, in all of this. I think what's exciting from as a community member, what I saw also shift was just being inclusive, right? So not just going out to the community, but you know, the utilities started opening the doors and said, like, please come in. We want to hear from you. You know, 15 years ago, there was a lot of, the language has changed. There was a lot of vilifying of poor people, let's just say that. So they used to call them the won't pays, you know. That has changed. That has changed into understanding energy poverty that so many people live in, and understanding the rapid influx of new technology. I mean, you know, we are living in an age where you can stand on a corner next to someone in a, you know, EV net zero off grid wearing a VR set, you know, talking to someone in Tokyo, next to someone who barely can keep the lights on and have any food, and that will continue to grow unless our utilities as an enabler of society, right? Help to bring everybody forward. So being transparent is something that I think has really changed over the last 15 years. And so can we just talk a little bit about that? What was the big shift when we started letting people in the door and asking them, how can I help improve your life?
Yeah, so I think the big shift was, it goes back to, 6, 7 years ago, right? As things started to, in San Antonio and in Texas in general, Peter just mentioned it's very, very hot, right? And so hot means you're going to turn on your AC as low as it can go and get a really cool and comfortable house. But unfortunately, we have homes that are very drafty, right? And so all that energy goes out the cracks and the crevices and the gaps in the doors and windows. And so there's big opportunity for us to be able to focus on those customers. But I mentioned we just a few weeks ago we celebrated weatherizing 30,000 homes, which is a huge, great accomplishment. But I think there's an opportunity for us to do many, many more, and we're hoping to do another 16,000 over the next 4 years. But I say that because it didn't come easy to be able to weatherize 30,000 homes. It took us 12 years to be able to do that. And part of that was because there's a level of distrust in the community. Right? And so I'm knocking on your door. Here's a guy in a CPS Energy shirt knocking on your door. First thing, they probably owe us $500 to $1,000. And so you're going to see the little crack through the window, right? And this happens to us every day. You see the little crack and people pretend they're not there, but you hear the movement or the cracking of the floor where they're walking or tiptoeing away, right? And so there's that level of distrust because they think that we're there to disconnect. Unbeknownst to them, right, we're there to try and give them $5,000, right? And for those that do open the door, they open the door, and I'm like, hey, I'm here to give you $5,000, and they shut it right back. Yeah, you're a scammer, right? Who's going to give me $5,000 for free?
It's like hard to believe.
Yeah. And so it's a hard sell, right? And it takes a great amount of effort and time and money to get people to trust us and get us to apply. And then there's also those darn imposters, right? Or those organizations that make people sign stuff that they might give them some money for free, but when they pass away, their house goes with them, right? And they take over and they lose their home. And so those are all those realities that they're having to face. And so those are all things that we're having to fight or work against, right, to get those people to work with us.
Are we allowed to ask questions yet?
I mean, I kind of think that listen, does anybody see Ricky right now? I think we can just do what we want to do. Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Do we have a mic for her? Does everybody hear her?
Okay, I'll try to project.
He's coming right now.
Oh, okay. Cool. Now I'm nervous. So I've been at my utility since 2016. I manage community-based partnerships and workforce development as part of my job. In the 6 years I've been there, I've been able to get one canvasser approved in that entire time. And I had to bring in external funding from Google to fund it because they would not fund canvassers. And the reasoning they gave is, one, unlike print marketing or email marketing, we can't control the messaging as much. We think customers will think it's a scam, and we think it isn't reasonable because it's a marketing strategy that is difficult to scale because we have a very large service territory. So selfishly, I would like to hear how you would convince my bosses to let me have more canvassers, because I agree with you that is the grassroots approach is the most effective, but it can be hard to sell that up the chain.
So if I can just kind of like jump in here, because I don't work at a utility, but I'm a community member, and I would say that, it's a tough thing. I can only speak for San Antonio, and growing up there, we have kind of an unusual situation in that we are municipally owned. We also own our water company as well. So our community has been permeated for decades about efficiency, conservation. I mean, we were doing things without calling them that, before there was climate change, there was like emission reduction. You know what I mean? We've gone through all the lingo changes. But so I think that's one. We primed people, and it's still difficult, and there's still some mistrust. But second is that, earlier Jesse was talking about, we had the STEP program. A kind of a little side note there, that was $850 million. So, and that was really because we own the utility and we were able to pick that up at a very small piece on everyone's bill, so on. It was like a semi-permanent funding mechanism. So, I think it's the conditions, that helped our situation in San Antonio. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to write a check. And it's how you get that money and how you're going to distribute that money in a way that is effective, that sweet spot of what is mutually beneficial. I think at the end of the day, that is what really kind of made it stick, if that makes sense.
So as an electric cooperative, I completely can relate with what you're saying. In fact, it's typical where the notion of, well, if you're creating a program, it's got to be a program for everyone. And if it's not, then you're not doing it, period. And because you want to show equity, every member has a vote. That's essentially what it comes down to. But what we did, and I'll talk about this energy efficiency program, we did a little bit differently, is we said, we know who our target is, especially those high energy burden and high energy users, but we want it open for everyone. But what we did is we intentionally, and the part of the legislation that allows us to do this is that we are regulated by a commission, and the state legislation that allows us to do this on the electric bill, that we can finance it. But part of it was have one stakeholder meeting with stakeholders, and that's all it said. It never really identified who are your stakeholders, who do you need to invite. So we intentionally set up 3 different stakeholder meetings and invited every possible stakeholder you could think of, including our own consumers. And we wanted our own consumers to be part of it, to hear. So you had the energy efficiency folks who were like all excited. You had environmentalists, you had everyone you could think of, but we also had our own consumers who were there. And by the time we were done with the 3rd one, we did 2 more because there was that much interest, especially from our consumers. Guess what? The same consumers were the ones who were saying, this is such a great program. So it got buy-in from a stakeholder perspective of engaging. And so now we have not heard any single person complain that this is only targeted to a certain group of folks, because now they recognize that the benefit is everyone gets to benefit from it. And that was the strategy that we took. And in fact, it's the same strategy we're taking as we look at how do we engage more and more of our different programs. I'll mention something that I've kind of talked about it, but sometimes, charity begins at home, right? You kind of have to start at home. And what we realize is we have all these great programs that, in fact, our own employees can qualify for. But we don't even talk to them about it, right? And so it's just like, so we intentionally began looking at that and saying, to our employees, we want to, so we set an all-employee call and talk to employees about, this is the program, this is what it does, this and this, and we want to encourage you as an employee who's also a member of the electric cooperative to join this program, and because guess what? They now become your champion regardless of what department they're in. And what we're seeing it transition, so for example, our mailroom, we changed their fleet to all electric. Gary, who's 64 years old, he's a happy guy, just keeps to himself. I've never seen this guy talk so much in his life. How excited he is to drive this electric thing. Next thing, 2 other people who work in the mailroom now went and bought electric vehicles. They're talking about it in their community. So in some ways, it's a 2-pronged, engage stakeholders, but really you gotta begin at home and engaging, get buy-in from, and I will tell you, trying to get buy-in from the executive level, me being at that level, we're probably not paying attention. We're so disconnected sometimes. But when we begin to hear it from more and more employees, we're like, wait a minute, there's something here, right? And that's where you begin to really be able to get it moving. So that would be the 2 things that I can at least highlight between many other things that we've been able to do that.
Please.
So just want to add to answer your question as well. We've been very lucky. So when I first started with the team, I think the team was 15 strong, and now by the end of this year, we're probably going to be close to about 44. And there's various teams. There's whether it's Asian team members, there's outreach, there's our customer response unit, our energy to business team that we talked about, but they all do a lot of the same things as well. And the way we've been able to sell that gal to your left there, she's very good at keeping track of all the data, right? And so in 2023, we actually did, and this was not by design, 2023 outreach events. And so think about that. So 365 days in a year, and we did 2023 in a year. So that means that we were somewhere, every single day, multiple times in that day. And so that takes a lot of resources to do that. And so what does that mean, right? And that means that everywhere you go, the odds are that you're going to see someone from my team that's going to be out there handing you something that's going to add value to you. And so we also we have MOUs with other organizations where we have mutual customers. And so it's a win-win, right? So we go and set up at the food bank. And we might provide them information on how to apply for weatherization, our affordability discount program, our senior late payment waiver program, whatever program might be. They sign up for that, but then they're also there at the food bank and they're going to get food, right, for the food bank. And then guess what? There might be somebody else there. They might get CareLink or somebody else to get some medical services. And so they walk away with a whole bundle of programs. And that's also a bundle that my team's able to go out there and promote and sell to these customers, right, and be able to get them to benefit. And when they're walking away, we have these customer assistance fairs that we host every single month. We do a couple of them a month, and we do them in each area of town. And we invite our partners to come to these events. And when customers come, if they bring all their information that they need, sometimes they walk out of there with thousands of dollars in assistance for going and spending an hour or two with us. And so we do that very targeted outreach to be able to get them to walk away with those benefits. Barry County, who helps us with our utility assistance a few weeks ago, said, hey, we got to spend $1.5 million by March 28th. And this was March 14th or 15th when they told us that. How can you help? So we got together, and in 4 days, we planned an event at our headquarters that we had never done before. And we had over 600 people show up. And we had hundreds of applications. And, we got the numbers yesterday. I think by yesterday they had already processed almost $500,000 in assistance to those customers. And that was for an event, that would have taken any other organization months to put together. We put it together in 4 days. So have a great team that's able to do that. But that's something that, nobody calls you overnight and says, hey, I have a $1.5 million. So when they call, you got to jump on it, and you got to take it, right? And so we're able to be very flexible, and I'm just happy that our customers are starting to trust us now to be able to jump on it and show up.
So we have about 7.5 minutes left. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. So we've kind of talked about the past, evolution. We've kind of talked about where we are right now. I want to talk a little bit about the future and where we're going and the nature of, again, this utility leadership out here in the community. I would say, in my opinion, I think that that evolution of the utility out in the community space has evolved as a reflection of how our community and our world has changed. Not only the way that we use energy and the way that we live our lives, the technology that has become business as usual that we need to operate in the world, but a big part of this is also our future. And I think part of the role of the utility, one of the many, is again helping to not just mitigate, but to help us to adapt to climate change. And I've seen that personally in San Antonio. As you know, it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And so, of course, our municipally owned utility, alongside our other community partners, has a major role in helping to, again, not just mitigate, because I think there's a very important focus on mitigating our contribution to climate change. I'm very proud to say that CPS Energy, we will have no more coal. Just voted to shut down the last of the coal plants, but what I'm talking about is the adaptation to climate change, the role of weatherization, the role of how we use energy in a more extreme climate. And so, can we talk about what do you see as those future themes, the role of utility in the future?
Sure. So I think from a climate perspective, right, we all know that's a very hot topic, and depending on who you talk to, you might get a different perspective. But in San Antonio and at CPS Energy, we've taken some very strong stance on it towards not only with the city, but with CPS Energy as well. And I think the role that we play partly is a big role, and it comes from my team, right? Because we're all doing the outreach, and we do a lot of education. So I think a lot of it's going to be from education, and we also not only we start with the little ones, right? So I think by 2030. Those little ones are going to be our customers, and they're going to be hopefully paying their CPS energy bill, right? But also they're going to be more wise on how to be able to use that energy as well. So not only that, but then on the other side is, we're going to continue to invest. I mentioned that we have a second iteration of our STEP program. So we're continuing to invest on weatherization, energy conservation, and we're also doing a lot to promote that as well. To be able to provide those benefits to our customers, to continue to see that and to see those reductions as we grow.
And I completely agree with you, Jesse, and I'll take a little bit of a different perspective. I am a physicist by nature, so I'm always thinking the planning side of it and the electrons. And part of where this goes in the future is how we plan for the grid. And our traditional engineering work plan, you plan it, you put it on the shelf, it's good for 3 or 4 years, you just build as the plan tells you and you go. It has to become dynamic. It has to engage the community. It has to engage everyday perspectives. In fact, one of the things that we've worked with our developers, everyone who's building homes, is we're telling them, we'd like for you, we're not using climate resilient home, but that's exactly where we're going with it is, solar battery, EV chargers in the home, and we're saying, make it ready to withstand what the grid looks like. And I am one to say, and I'll be bullish to say, we cannot build bulk power fast enough to meet the needs that we'll have. So everything on the distributed side will be one of the most critical things that we'll need. We as a utility now play a role of how to manage those electrons, right? And ensuring that our consumers can adapt to how to use electricity the best way. And so we'll have even a more critical role to play in engaging the community when we think about how we plan for the grid. If not, it will continue to be a challenge for what we do every day. So I see us as engaging with our consumers on a regular basis, them informing us on how we plan our build out, because the reality of it, I was having a conversation with a line worker the other day, and he said, I've had to change 4 transformers, and he's been at the job on a team apprentice, but he's like, we've changed 4 transformers in 3 weeks, and these are good functioning transformers. And he's like, I don't understand what's happening. And I said, did you talk to the consumer why? And he said, yeah, they've bought electric vehicles. I said, that's the nature of why we need more input from our consumers. We need to understand, because if we're putting what could be a 25 kVA standard transformer on to feed 2 homes, good luck with that, right? It's not going to be what is needed. But yet again, we can't plan to put 100 kVA for 2 homes without, so what's that sweet spot? And that sweet spot is how much you engage your community and how much you engage your consumers to really be able to fit into what engineering work plan looks like. So it's my colleague and I, we go back and forth, because he and I have said, we think engineering planning has completely changed it from the traditional sense to using analytics and using consumer input to really drive where things are going.
That was great. Well, listen, we're at 2 minutes. I think we have a quick, anybody have another question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Crystal Green. I'm with DNV. DNV Energy has a healthcare division. I was just wondering, when you partner in the community, are you aware that we accredit U.S. hospitals, so we're the ones that show up in the hospital unannounced. Low-income communities tend to use urgent care and emergency rooms as their first line for healthcare. If somebody in a low-income community has asthma because of maybe a heat or energy-related issue and they go to the ER, if they come back within 30 days and they're Medicare, the hospital gets a substantial fine from Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. And I didn't know if you were aware of that. They might make a good partner as you're working on your energy equity to partner with the hospitals, because they have a vested interest in how this goes.
Minute and 18 seconds. Who wants to go?
I would just say that's a
good
great
question. It's
point.
very
One of
common.
our strategies is how we work with our healthcare facilities, and I will take that back to my team to tell them what they need to be doing.
Yeah, just real quick, same, right? We're getting ready to revamp our critical care program that's tied very closely to that. So definitely look forward to talking more about that.
Well, I want to thank all of you. I wanted just to give a quick shout out to our panelists here. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. The work that you're doing is really inspirational. I also want to say happy 10-year anniversary to Z Prime. Love ETS, love all the programming. And I just kind of want to part with this. I feel like the future of utility leadership in the community, it's equity, it's inclusion, it's climate readiness. it is resiliency. And so leadership, I think, is it's really about lifting everyone up. So thank you so much, and let's enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.